Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City. On the program today, State Senator Keith Pickard for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers. 40 years ago, Hotel California and the theme from Rocky were #1 on the pop charts, and D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal started on the road to becoming Nevada's leading roofing company.
I couldn't be more proud of what we've achieved.
And over these 40 years, we've become an employee-owned company. So when you're talking to any employee, you're talking to an owner.
And here's to the next 40 years.
Happy 40th birthday, D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal.
Nearly 200,000 Nevadans work in retail businesses, supporting families and the community. Nevada's retail businesses generated over $2 billion in sales tax revenue in 1 year, including nearly $700 million to help our schools. Shop around and see all that Nevada's retailers offer our state.
We're the Retail Association of Nevada, representing thousands of Nevada businesses.
Businesses that work for Nevada.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City. We're recording in the old Supreme Court in the state capitol, and we're pleased to welcome back to the program now State Senator Keith Pickard of District 20. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
So I've got to ask you, we're taping this the day after the Barr report on the Mueller report came out. Just your initial thoughts.
You know, I've always been a strong believer in the concept of innocent until proven guilty, and it sounds like they don't have the proof necessary to prove anything. So I think it's probably a non-issue, and we don't need to spend any more time on it.
And I would totally agree with you, except for the fact that this is going to be a huge issue all the way through the election.
Of course.
That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, it will, but you know, I think the general public is pretty sensitive to the partisan nature of politics today, and so I don't see this report as convincing anyone who wasn't already convinced as to their position. I thought Attorney General Barr's response, where he said it doesn't exonerate him, was a classic prosecutorial statement. Because it's almost impossible to prove innocence. It's hard to prove something never happened. It's certainly, you know, the case that if you don't have enough proof that it actually happened, you can't go forward. But rarely do we ever see actual exonerations. And so I thought Attorney General Barr's comment was pretty typical of a prosecutor. But it doesn't really tell us any more than the rest of the report does. All we know is there's not enough evidence to support charges against the president or at this point anyone else for any wrongdoing, and there wasn't any evidence or wasn't sufficient evidence to prove collusion with Russia or anyone else. So.
And the point of this is, and this is the story I would say, is that prosecutors never exonerate.
No, that's
because
correct.
they don't go to prove a negative. They either come out and say, yes, you're guilty of something. They don't come out and say, well, you're not guilty of this, you're not guilty of that.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
And they don't have to because of the presumption of innocence. So I think we need to get back to our foundation and just move on.
Let's move on to the legislature and what's going on here.
Sure.
One of the bills that you're involved in as a co-sponsor is to allow, well, current existing state law allows kids as young as 14 to drive to school in rural Nevada. Explain to us what the bill is that's going to change things.
Well, this is Assemblywoman Hansen's bill to allow students as young as 14 that are attending charter schools to drive to school. It's on a designated route. Typically, we wouldn't put them on a freeway kind of thing. But existing law allows for children as young as 14 to drive to school or to private school. But left out of the statute is charter schools. Now, currently, all charter schools are public schools, but there's certainly the opportunity for a charter school to come in that would not be deemed a public school. And what this does is it allows for all of those students, not just a select number. Right now, I understand there are 45 14-year-olds that have this special use permit. We don't see that number growing significantly because the number of charter school students is relatively low. But this is a pretty innocuous bill when you really get into the details.
And we've not gotten reports, or I certainly have not read any media reports over the years of kids of that age getting into accidents or whatever. And let's face it, if you live on a farm, you've been driving since you were able to hit the pedals.
But let's not, ignore the fact that driving on a farm on a private property is different than driving on the open roads where you have others driving with you. That said, there's plenty of experience in those instances, but we're not talking necessarily about farm children either. We're talking about suburban and urban children that nearly had to get to their charter school. And you're right, I've heard of no instances where a 14-year-old has been involved in an automobile accident on their way to school.
You get any pushback from law enforcement?
No, at least they've not talked to me about it.
Okay. Nevada has a chronic shortage of doctors, as we all know. You're a co-sponsor of a bill that will allow doctors licensed in other jurisdictions to practice into Nevada under a provisional 6-month license while the medical licensing boards consider their applications. You, along with Senator Joe Hardy and Assemblywoman Robin Titus, they are medical doctors, yet the State Board of Medical Examiners disagrees. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first, the bill is intended to increase the number of competent, skilled doctors that are in Nevada. There's been a lot of talk over the past couple of years about expanding the residencies of medical students in Nevada in order to allow for a greater number of doctors because the med students tend to stay where they do their residencies. The problem is that doesn't fix the problem in the short term, and we need to attract doctors here, doctors that are skilled, that are well-known, that have a track record of success. And Nevada has, over the period of years, developed the reputation of being one of the hardest states to get their credentials in. And so we have a hard time recruiting people to teach, to mentor these residencies, to engage in the practice of medicine in Nevada. And we've got to change this. We'll never get to where we need to in the short term if we don't. And I understand the medical board's concerns, but we don't believe that this honestly detracts from the level of care we have in Nevada if were we to bring these people in. They're already working in other states, they're in good standing, and we've added an amendment to make sure that it's clear that these people don't have negative histories, that they don't have malpractice on their records. And so we're not lowering the standards, and in fact, we're not actually changing the standard of care when it comes to making sure that these doctors are qualified. And so I think that the medical board is acting a little reflexively because we certainly don't want to attract doctors that are, as he put it, running from discipline in other states. We've already got mechanisms in place through the Interstate Compact where we look at those records and we see that, and we wouldn't change the standard for those doctors coming in. This just gives them an opportunity for the first 6 months while they're completing their applications and getting all the details squared away, that we allow them to practice.
Would we allow doctors from other countries to be able to come in under this system, from India, the Philippines, etc.?
This bill contemplates only doctors from other states. But again, if we're talking about doctors who have proven to meet the requirements of the licensing in Nevada, so they've gone to an appropriate accredited medical school, they've had a residency that we would recognize, I don't see any reason why we would not.
And the need is certainly there. Let's take a break. We'll come back with much more right after this.
Tamarack Junction is South Reno's hotspot with over 450 of the latest slots and video games. Sully Sports Bar, the Dining Car Restaurant, William Hill Sportsbook, and the Tamarack Steakhouse and Lounge. We're just north of the Summit Mall in South Virginia. Yeah.
Hey, Dad? What are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it.
Yes. Yes, they will.
Hi, I'm Eric Robnett, owner of Home Energy Experts. Has this ever happened to you?
Honey, did you remember to turn down the thermostat?
Forgetting to set the temperature? Not fun. We can help. Our new smart thermostat keeps the temperature set for your comfort all by itself.
I'm feeling hot now.
To increase your comfort, go to homeenergyexperts.com for details. That's homeenergyexperts.com.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
The Tamarack Junction Steakhouse is known for signature steaks, handcrafted cocktails, and world-class wines. Join us Thursdays and Friday nights from 4:30 to 6:30 in the Steakhouse Lounge for live music, gourmet plates, and well-priced wines, just north of the Summit Mall on South Virginia.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with State Senator Keith Pickard. You were openly critical of the retirement buyout of Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority CEO Rusty Wallen-Carter. You called it a public shakedown. What do you think would have been a fair retirement package for him?
Well, he's already getting, I understand, a little over $300,000 a year for the rest of his life on the state dime. Granted, those were promises.
Right, which he had earned.
Yes,
I mean, that was the
he had earned. That was the contract he earned. But we're already struggling with budgetary issues in this state. And for him to demand that he get more than what he was contracted to get, it kind of struck me as a little bold. I probably wouldn't have reacted negatively, however, had it not been for the really known misconduct in office. I just, one of the things that I try to do is work toward removing corruption from government. And so for him to have been caught, and yes, he paid the money back, but he knew what he was doing, I suspect.
And these were using gift cards that were supplied to the Convention Authority for personal use.
Well, they were purchased by the Convention Authority, right. And he used them, and I guess others did, use them for personal travel with no apparent intent at the time to pay them back. And but the investigation implicated him in other areas, and so, but again, we have the presumption of innocence, so I'm not accusing him for anything else, but this was essentially a public shakedown.
Okay, well, you're a lawyer, okay, so you were formerly a teacher, then you became a lawyer. The additional money that he's getting is as a consultant to the Convention Authority, correct? Is that the
part of that is, yes.
That's what you're referring. Is there other money that you're referring to?
My understanding was he got a cash bonus.
Okay.
Plus the consulting contract. And my understanding is that consulting contract is about $15,000 a month.
Correct.
And if you look at...
But that's not out of line with the position he held and the amount of money he was earning. And if you look at other Convention Authority chiefs across the country, the other part I'd like to say is that this was an investigation by a newspaper. This was not a police investigation. There is my understanding, a police investigation now based on that. But at this point, as we were talking about earlier, he's been convicted of nothing.
No, that's correct. But again, he's contractually receiving his retirement. He's got a contract for $15,000 a month, which is more than nearly every worker in Southern Nevada that works for the LVCVA. And then we add, on top of that, a bonus when it's questionable whether or not Steve Hill, the subsequent CEO, needs his help. I mean, Steve Hill is a very smart, accomplished businessman of his own right, and so whether or not it's necessary is in question, whether or not it's justified is in question, in my mind. And so the cash bonus under the shroud of scrutiny, I just thought was wrong. It sends the wrong message. The message that we should be sending to our constituents is we care about corruption and we want to weed it out.
Again, this is alleged corruption. It's
That's
not
correct.
Corruption. And 40 years of experience in that business, a majority of that time heading up the convention authority, that's a vast amount of contacts, a vast amount of connections, a vast amount of institutional knowledge. And as you know from serving in the legislature since term limits, one of the things we have lost the most and has affected people like yourself is the lack of institutional knowledge within the body. Now the institutional knowledge is contained within the lobbyists and within the LCB. It's not within the legislature, so isn't there indeed a value to having that institutional knowledge?
Well, I don't argue that there's value in institutional knowledge, but I don't think the whole operation rests with one person. The bench is deep there, and again, Mr. Hill is very smart, knowledgeable. He's been involved for many years.
By the way, no argument about Steve Hill. He's done an incredible job in all the things with GoEd, but he's only recently joined the Convention Authority. He was put in place. I think that if I were put in place and somebody had been in that job for 40 years and still had the ability to communicate, that I would still want to communicate with them. And if they wanted to donate that time, fine. But, I mean, that's, you look at former Mayor Oscar Goodman, he's the Goodwill Ambassador and still being paid, a monthly amount as a stipend, and nobody's calling that, potentially criminal or...
Well, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to suggest this is criminal in nature. I'm suggesting that given this $15,000 a month contract, and clearly the board thought that he was justified in that, plus his
Which
pension.
is almost every elected official and all the heads of most
Well,
of
I
the
wouldn't go quite that far, but they're...
the mayors, the county commission, I mean, it's not a board of just underlings.
No, absolutely. You've got heads of industry, you've got electeds on that board, and they've determined that they want that. Fine. Again, personally, I question whether or not the value of $15,000 a month is there, but that's up to them to decide. But on top of both of these income streams, we gave them a cash payout, a cash bonus, and I disagree with that. Had I been on the board, I would have voted against it, but I'm not on the board, so I didn't get a vote.
And that's where we have to leave it there, but we're going to hold you over because this is a great conversation, so we're going to keep you for the whole show. We'll be right back after this.
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. Come visit Design Outdoor's store and backyard to see our wide selection of fire pits, barbecues, and pizza ovens, natural stone water features and fountains, and frost-proof pottery. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
Can't do it. Stupid, like my mom.
We can't do anything at Mommy's because you won't pay child support.
Dad said you cheated, and he's not even sure he's my dad.
Mommy said you left both of us, so she isn't gonna let me see you. I look just like my father.
I'm divorce attorney Marilyn York, and I may represent men, but hate has no gender, only casualties. Please, stop sacrificing your children in your war against your ex.
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. A lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
Everyone is talking about opioids, but they're not the only drugs that can be harmful if taken in large quantities or not as prescribed. You also need to be aware of side effects from anxiety drugs, muscle relaxants, sleep aids, and stimulants. Mixing prescription drugs with other drugs or alcohol can be dangerous. If you take Ambien with a glass of wine, it may be enough to stop you from breathing. Prescribed drugs can be just as dangerous as illegal drugs. Take medications only as directed.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City. We continue our conversation with State Senator Keith Pickard of District 20. Here's a great bill. It caught the eye of my researcher, Ray Hager, who said that SB 389, of which you are 4 primary co-sponsors, would prevent anyone from setting up beehives where there are more than 2 residents per acre. Has this been a problem before? Are people raising bees now where they could be a health hazard? It's interesting that 8 of the 9 sponsors or co-sponsors are Republican. Please break that out.
Well, let me just answer the question about the Republican nature of this. That was just because this came out at the last possible moment before we had to introduce the bill. We happened to all be in the same room, and they signed on. Yeah. So it was not, in fact, if you look at the vast majority of my bills, they're bipartisan. They have Democrats on them as well. But the whole idea behind the bill came from a situation in my district where a group of residents were dealing with a beekeeping operation. It's called an apiary, for about 3 years. And they weren't getting anywhere with the city. This is a densely populated neighborhood. It is surrounded by neighborhood. It's not a little pocket of houses off in the distance. This is right in the middle of suburban Henderson. And the city was appropriately trying to encourage people to plant flowers and shrubs and trees that would attract and support the bee colony. As we went into the research and found out that the colony collapse problem we have in other parts of the country is not a problem here in Nevada. And on top of that, 100% of the bees in southern Nevada are Africanized to one point or another. And all that means is they tend to be aggressive when they're defending their hive. But in this case, we had an operation that was moving forward really under the noses of code enforcement because there was no ordinance at the time for apiaries. But there was an operation or an ordinance for home occupations. But one of the primary tenets of a home occupation in Henderson is that you keep it completely within the home. Well, you can't do that with a beekeeping operation. And we had swarming and other problems. The children in the neighborhood were getting stung. And some of the kids in the neighborhood are allergic. And so this is a measure to try to recognize that there's a balance in all things. There's certainly no, and I take no issue with bees and beekeeping. I love bees. I love what they do. But we're talking about putting large numbers of bees in concentrated areas where children live. And we think that that's a health hazard, one that should be addressed, so we brought the bill.
Your name is on a lot of bills. You have one of the longest lists of bills, primary sponsorship and co-sponsorship on the legislature's website. What's your top priority?
You know, my top priority right now is just making sure that the interests, both the legal rights and the health issues of our constituents are considered and protected. I have a number of family law related bills because I am a family lawyer. We're trying to correct some of the errors and some of the problematic areas of the statutory scheme there. I've brought a bill to try to make sure that health care for chronic conditions continues. There's a tendency on the part of insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, to do what we call prior authorization for chronic conditions, and that doesn't make a lot of sense in many instances. Unless there's something changing, whether it be in the formulary or in the health of the patient, there really isn't a need to put the patient through this authorization procedure when it's a chronic condition. Chronic, by definition, is one that is not subject to remission or recovery. And so we know that this is a long-term issue. There's no reason to revisit that and cut them off from their medications while that bureaucratic process is taking place. We started out, this bill was originally introduced last session. We recognized that there were some problems with it, so we pulled it. We worked during the interim to figure out what those fixes needed to be. We've brought a compromise measure, and with hope, everyone at the table will be on the support side this time.
And we'll be doing a program on chronic illness next week, so you'll get more on that.
Great.
Just give me a brief answer here. James Settlemyer over the weekend was quoted as saying very positive things about Leah Cannizzaro. You feel the same way?
I do. I think she's got a lot on her plate. She's said and done some things that are problematic, I think, but that's probably just because she's new to the position. As she gets more experience, I think she'll get better.
And that's where we have to leave it for now.
Okay.
Please come back before end of session.
All
Pleasure
right.
to have you on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, and we'll be right back. A bird's eye captures its surroundings at different heights. At Brian Culpa Photography, we can make your imagination soar over buildings, parks, cityscapes, and beyond. Brian's images tell the story and get the job done. If you need a new perspective to tell your story, contact Brian today. Brian Culpa Photography. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Miner, and I'm sure you'd agree that Nevada's a very special place to live. I was born here, and my husband and I have raised our family here. I feel it's a privilege to live and work in the Truckee Meadows. I especially enjoy helping my clients reach their real estate goals. Sometimes the smallest details provide the greatest satisfaction. I'd be complimented to talk to you about your next move.
Call Marilyn Miner at Dixon Realty, 742-1280, or log on to marilynminer.com.
St. Ives Florist, for every holiday and every special occasion. For romance. Custom home design. We have the largest selection of fresh flowers in northern Nevada. And we also offer a large selection of unique gift items. Come see me, Lorianne, at St. Ives Florist, 700 South Wells Avenue, or call me at 333-9190.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
You can now subscribe to the Nevada Newsmakers YouTube channel. Get all your shows sent to your phone or tablet. We'll see you on the next broadcast.